you that they have marriage figured out, they're not being honest with you, because marriage is constantly growing and changing. There's some things that you have to know, you have to understand. But I think the reason why this episode is important, because a lot of you guys may know, I initiated the encounter we first had. Everybody knows I wrote a pencil off the table to get Gil's attention. And I think sometimes, because sometimes as women, we have this look on our face like, get away from me, leave me alone, stay away, that it makes men afraid to approach us. And so it's okay to initiate, to let him know you're interested, but stop chasing him. And the thing that I thought was really cool about Gil and I, because we were young, and I was like this on him. And he just had to basically tell me, he was like, just give me some space. Let me
breathe.
Let him breathe. And so I think sometimes
not that she was smothering me or choking me out or anything. It was just more of, it was so, I couldn't see her. Because she wasn't that like that literally, but sometimes you don't give the other person the opportunity and the time to just see the whole you. If you're constantly initiating every conversation, every interaction, every connection is always initiated by you, then that can lead to the person becoming lazy. And when I say lazy, if you don't have to do anything, if the person is always coming at you, you don't have to do anything. So therefore, you're going to take advantage of that just by natural human nature and just kick back and just say, I'll just let it come to me because I don't have to do anything.
And I think that is a big part of what has happened in our society. And one of the things that Gil's mom told me, she was like, look, he knows how to cook. He knows how to clean. He knows how to wash. Don't break him. Don't start doing things for him that he can do for himself. And so I think that in our society, a lot of women have made men lazy, and they don't know how to hunt. If you brought a wild animal in, you tried to make him a pet, eventually that pet's nature is going to dissipate. And so it's a man's nature to hunt and to chase and pursue. And so if you chase him, when is he going to chase you?
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to be understanding, because so many times we don't realize that we start, and my grandma said, start things off the way you want them to be. So if I'm going to be the chaser, the initiator, the pursuer, eventually, because that's not the way I'm wired, I am not going to have the longevity for that. And then I'm going to start to blame him because he's not done something that I didn't give him an opportunity to establish. And so I think a lot of times when we always talk about the longest journey is the journey inward, we have to understand that a lot of the situations we found ourselves in, a lot of the things we're experiencing in our marriage and our relationships is because of this habits, or because of our lack of the ability to trust the process. And just because things don't happen when you want it to, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Hey, to you guys who are on here, when you guys come on, if you come on now or in the future, please put where you're coming from. We want to know you. We want you to know us. So please put in the chat where you are, because we want to know where you're coming in from. So please do that. We would like that.
So we're going to talk tonight about this. Even though Renee titled it "Stop Chasing Him," I had a little bit of angst with that, I would say. Only because the woman is not always the one doing the pursuing. By nature, the guy should be doing the pursuing for the woman. But just like what Renee said, if you're always up in his face or in his space, you don't give him the opportunity to. But there are times and there are situations where the guy is doing the pursuing, and sometimes you can do the pursuing from a perspective of, I want to get to know this person, but they're not responding in a way that lets me know that it is okay. Mm-hmm. It is not something that they are, what they may seem like they're not really interested in. So therefore you have to think about that when you're actually doing the pursuing.
I agree with that. And I think that even though once you get married, so now we're married. So there are times when I have to make sure that I make myself available to Gil and I let him know that I'm interested, that I desire him. So in a marriage relationship, it's a little different, but when you're dating, I think it's important that you establish those ground rules for who should be the initiator. It's not to say that one person has to do everything. And we were talking about this yesterday. Is marriage 50-50? I'm a whole person. I bring 100%. Gil's a whole person. He brings 100%. There's gonna be times when I'm not feeling well, or I'm got a lot going on, and I may only bring, because Gil asked me that when we had a situation we were struggling with. He said, "What percentage of yourself would you bring to our marriage?" And I said, "Probably 30%." You know,
because you may be distracted by the issues and things that just happen through everyday life. You know, it could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be mental, that you may be under some type of stress, and it may not have anything to do with the relationship or the marriage. So therefore, there are going to be times where you're at a low point. Everybody who's been in this relationship, marriage space, or even just in time will tell you that there are going to be highs and lows, and you've experienced that in your relationship. That is just the normal part of human, or being human and being in a relationship. But you have to realize that when those things happen, you have to bring some of the energy and some of the lack, or, well, not necessarily say, I wouldn't say spark. I would say it's more, you have to make up for the deficit that the other person may be going through, to bring that relationship back to wholeness. Because the whole goal is to always be whole as best you can. Now, if you're at a time where both of you guys are down a little bit, then there's something that you have to come together as a unified front and a unified team and say, this is what's going on. Really assess and evaluate the situations to say, okay, this is what's going on. How do we approach this, or how do we overcome this area that we're experiencing right now? So even in tonight that we're going to talk about, we always want to bring value in these times that we spend together, because we know that the time is valuable and we appreciate you guys spending time with us. So therefore, we want to always leave you with something to either make you go, or ah, or yeah, or that was good. Like some of the other comments that we had.
And a part of it is that it's not just us sharing our experience. It's also us giving you some things so that you can see yourself. And sometimes you can see yourself by hearing someone's story, because we want you to realize that the things that we're sharing with you, it's not just our training. These are the things that we really live with and go through. And I think that's what kind of makes it a little bit different, because when you get to see it from a male's perspective and a female's perspective, it allows you to see yourself in the conversation. Because it's easy to go and have one person coach you and the other person not be there. And so we feel that with both of us being here together, it really positions both people to feel seen and heard and understood, because that's really important to really grow.
So we're going to talk a little bit. We always want to give you some of the, where are you at right now? Some things that you can do to really assess your own personal state, where you are right now. If you're in a relationship, pursuing a relationship, married, or thinking about getting married, or already in the engagement stage or the newlywed stage, this stuff that we're talking about tonight is going to be actually applicable regardless of what stage of your relationship that you're in. And the first part that we're going to talk about is, how do you know, or things that you can do when you need to stop chasing and pursuing. Sometimes, as the saying goes, you got to read the room. Sometimes you have to really look at what's going on, and it's a sign. You're going to see the signs all the time. Now, whether you choose to acknowledge them or whether you choose to do some actionable things with them, that's on you. But you can't ignore it, but you have to be conscious that there are signs there. And the first one we're going to give you is lack of commitment. We talked a little bit about this one last week because it was one of the points we talked about. Are you ready for marriage? But this one, we're talking about it from the standpoint of basically a commitment. This is when somebody, even though Renee titled it Stop Chasing Him. Well, think about that. If you're chasing him and this person don't want to be caught, then you're going to be doing some long running, you know.
And I really think that it shouldn't be a matter of you. I don't think, and it doesn't give you a good feeling when you're trying to chase someone. Especially, I guess it's different for women because it can make us feel rejected. Mm-hmm. It can make us feel unwanted. It can make us feel not valuable. And when you are pursuing, when it's natural for the man to chase the woman and the woman is chasing the man, it could be a game for the guy. Mm-hmm. You know, and so if you feel like there's a game that's being played, if you feel like your emotions and, you know, your value is being diminished, then that's another sign. You know, if you feel like you're constantly questioning, well, or you're making excuses for how the other person is never available, then that's something you need to really check and really be mindful of. I think about when you what you said, because what you said to me really helped me. You're like, I guess because of my personality, if you have a very type A personality, sometimes we want what we want when we want it. But a part of it is you want the person to want you. You want that to be that the person is initiating, not that you're trying to make them. Because we were talking to our nephew, and I was explaining to him. I said, a girl who will choose you will trap you. And when we get emotionally connected, or we get afraid, we start taking desperate measures. And so there's a reason why God designed things the way that he did, to protect us from ourselves, and to protect us from making things out of balance. Because if I have to constantly pursue him, then that's me devaluing myself. And so then if I'm devaluing myself and he sees that, then it's natural for the person to value you the way you value you.
Right.
And so you deserve to be chased. You deserve to be pursued. You deserve to be the priority. And so you shouldn't settle for anything less than that. When you start to see that, then you need to pull back yourself.
Because when you think about that lack of commitment, it's going to show itself in different ways and in different forms. One of them is going to be inconsistent communication. Have you ever tried making calls? Well, back in the day, I just dated myself, I know. But if you tried to make calls to this person, whether it's the old school or the old rotary phones that we used to have, or even just from your cell phone, you won't be able to reach this person. They will be conveniently unavailable, or they will always be busy, or they just won't have time. That's a sign. And you have to pay attention to it, because that inconsistency in the communication is an indicator that maybe you're chasing them and they don't want to be caught.
How did it make you feel when I was pursuing you?
Obviously, it makes you feel good, because you want to be pursued. You want a person to chase after you. You want that person to not chase you from a point of, I don't want to be caught, but because it shows interest. It shows that this person is interested in me as an individual, and me as a person. Most of the time, it always starts out with the physical, which means the visual. You'll see the person, they may have an attribute that you see and that's attractive to you, whatever that may be. Everybody's different. And so that's going to be the visual, is the first part that you're going to see. So you start chasing them long before you actually physically interact with them, because you're going to see them. You're going to see them and say, that's interesting, or I like the way that looks, or that person looks, or that feature or something that was there attractive. Obviously, they're not something that you're going to always pursue, but it's something, if you're thinking about this person, if they're available, you're going to have to figure out, is this somebody that I can have a relationship with? Because obviously some people are already be committed and things like that. But then, so to answer your question, it made me feel good to know that this person, or that you were interested in me from the onset, because it also made it like, okay, that's half the battle. If this person is interested in me and they have the physical and the characteristics that I find attractive, it's like, that's half the battle. That's half the insecurity, or the uncertainty that you may have, like, this person.
So guys really worry about being...
Oh, absolutely. I only can speak for me. I know that there are guys out there that are like, no, I'm all that and I got it like that. I never had any struggles, I'm sure. But I think for me, I was always thinking about, because in this society that we have, it's always expected that the guy is the one to initiate. The guy should be the one to chase. The guy should be the one to do everything first. And sometimes, like you mentioned already, it's not going to always work out that way, to where, yes, I may be the one that initiates and pursues, but there's no worse feeling than getting shot down in somebody that you, or rejected, as they would say, to someone that you found interesting, and you decide to, as they say, shoot your shot, and you go and approach them and try to establish some type of relationship. Even your very first contact, even rapport is a relationship contact. That's where it starts. You have to establish a commonality or something with that person from the very beginning. So it's always good from that perspective, but it's still unnerving to know that I may be rejected. Nobody likes rejection. It's just, but it's a part of just being a human.
Yeah, and it's a part of, the only way you're going to know is by taking that first step.
Right.
And I think so many times people miss out on, I think about like with your mom and your dad, your mom would always say, I want my husband back.
Mhm.
I think so many times there's people who want to be together, but because of pride or fear of being rejected, or they're still operating based on their old experiences,
Oh,
that
yeah.
they miss out on something great. I mean, I think we all have insecurities because I was insecure, but it was something that just made me say, I just want to get his attention. I'm just going to take my chance.
Right.
You
So
know?
what made you decide to take your chance, or as they say, like I said earlier, shoot your shot, to say, I wonder where this could go?
It was just something about you that just got my, it was just something, it wasn't just the way you looked. It was a feeling that I had about your presence. And I was like, I want to.
Isn't it weird that we still talk about this stuff after all these years? Because we do. And it wasn't just Renee pursuing me. Yes, she made the initial contact.
Right.
I'll say it that way. That one little pencil, yes, she pushed it off the table, but there still had to be a part of me picking that pencil up and responding in a positive manner to say, I'm just as interested in you. Now, I could have just picked up the pencil, put it on the table, and just walked away and said, I'm done, or nah, not interested because of whatever physical, visual, or whatever it would have been. It could have been just a bad day for me. Who knows? But it wasn't. So you still are going to have to respond in a positive manner.
And I think so many times, because I think about just, there's so much going on in the world right now.
Sure.
Everybody is angry and upset, and it's just, I think that there's so many missed opportunities for making healthy connections because people won't lay aside the fear of being rejected. And the thing about the fear of being rejected is that you don't want to be alone. But if you don't take the step, you're going to end up being alone.
You're going to get what you're afraid that you don't want. You're going to end up in that same position anyway. So that's the first one we're going to talk about. Now, the next one is a reluctance to actually make future plans. If someone is actually interested in you, it's not going to be, or if they're going to reciprocate.
Or if he, because I think a part of the person that has to be doing this is the man. You have to first you have to first show me, okay, I'm going to go to the Air Force, and because a part of it is making plans
that encompass you. Yes.
Right. Not you doing this and, oh, well, I'll just come. If you have to invite yourself into someone's life, that might not be the relationship that's for you, because it has to be reciprocal. Both people have to want it.
Yes.
And so when you're making these plans and you were like, well, when we get married, we're going to do this, and and I'm gonna buy you this kind of car. And so I could hear in his conversation that he was including me.
Right.
And that made me feel secure. That made me feel safe. But again, I have a stronger personality to Gil, and I had to slow down and go at his pace. Because one of the things that the Lord showed me is grace is me walking at the person's pace, not me pulling them at theirs. And I think this is one of the things that when you're, getting into relationships when you're older, because now we're seeing people getting in relationships a lot older. And so these are all things you have to take into consideration that can be an obstacle to the person that you may really be interested in. My mother always said, it's better to have loved than lost than never to have loved at all. It's better to at least try to let the relationship see where it's going to go and be open to being maybe disappointed, but you'll never know what it could be if you have all these walls up and you're afraid.
Sure. And you said something that is really tied to that conversation of, if I'm interested in pursuing a relationship with you, I'm going to be speaking in a manner that is letting you know that I am thinking about you. So that conversation, that's one of the signs of the actionable things that we'll give you here talking. We'll give you one now, is to listen to what's being said. If what's being said is a positive, affirming communication, then that's letting you know that, hey, wait a minute, this person sees a possible future with me. And I'm not saying it's going to go from, hey, how you doing? Let's walk down the aisle. I'm saying, hey, how you doing? I'm looking forward to seeing and engaging with you more in the future. Because if they're in a position of conversation of future speak, then that's something that is a positive, and it's letting you know that yes, it's something that they want just as much as you may
You both
want
agree.
when it comes to the relationship. But on the flip side of that, the sign that you may want to think about is to, we said it at the very beginning of this, stop chasing them.
Right.
Just stop from the very beginning, because if not, then you're going to be pursuing something that may not be something that is actually there.
Because you're going to be doing it all, and it's not going to be the other person's desire. Like you, it's like, I can't see you because you like this.
Right.
You know, and so I had to realize, well, you know, okay, so I had to stop trying to make it happen when I wanted it to happen and let him lead. And sometimes that can be challenging when you have a really strong personality.
So even when you think about that, a person that is that, let's just say you initiated or they responding in kind, and as you say, stop chasing them. But the other side of that is they will want to spend time with you. They will be looking for times that when they're not with you, they're already thinking about when is the next time that we can get together or be together and enjoy each other's presence and enjoy each other's company. Because if they're not thinking about that, then that may be something that you may want to pay attention to and think about.
And there's a lot of videos that I've seen about, because there's so many blended families now. You got so many women who have multiple kids and men who have multiple kids, and them not knowing how to prioritize each other. You know, I said, so I think ideally, the ideal situation is not the norm, and it's not common now. Right. So I think there's so many obstacles you have to overcome, and it starts with you. It starts with you being real about what you want and what you need, and being able to give the other person time and space to show you. One of the things you and I were just talking about earlier was the person you should be looking to spend your life with should be someone that you can be a friend.
Right.
You know, and I think that that's something that I think that has kind of been
lost.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, instead of pursuing and chasing after establishing a relationship
from my husband,
or she's gonna be my wife from the very beginning, think about, and every person who has a successful marriage and a long-term relationship will tell you, this is my best friend. Yeah. This is my best friend. This is the person that I want to spend time with. So wouldn't it be easier to think about it in the most natural sense that if the same things that it takes to build healthy friendships is the same thing that it's going to take to build healthy relationships long term and from a romantic sense. Right. So if you look for those characters and attributes and things that you have with your friends right now, it's not very much different. There are only a couple elements that are really different.
One major
there's a major element. We know, the physical interaction that may obviously be different than the friendship.
But you know what? I think that's what I love about
it. Makes it better. It makes it.
It does. And really, intimacy, sexual intimacy, is what makes marriage different from every other relationship. Because your marriage is the only legitimate source of sexual intimacy. And so if you reserve that for marriage, the reason why marriage is not as special to people is because they're handling it. They're not.
You're already doing the things that married folks do without the commitment and the things that you take.
And the vulnerability and the intimacy.
All the things that it takes for you to have that marriage and to be with that person. You've kind of jumped over those steps and went straight to the intimacy, physical side of things. So therefore, it's going to break down.
Yeah, it is. Because unfortunately, there's no foundation. What it should be built on, it's not built on that. And it's built on, we talked about love and lust. It's built on the imposter lust. And it's not built on love. And so when something is built on love is patient, it's kind, it's not easily provoked, it hopes all things, it believes all things. Love endures. And I think that's the thing that we have to see and understand, that in lasting relationships, it's not a fantasy, it's not a fairy tale. It is built on things that you don't have control over. It's built over things that God created. And when you allow him, when you walk under, because we were talking about it, the difference between a contract and a covenant. A marriage is not a contract. A marriage is a covenant. And a covenant is a blood oath you take that's till death do us part. And I think, unfortunately, right now, so many people are treating marriage as if it's a contract that they can just change their mind about, or like they change their clothes. And so it's not going to have the same value if you don't use it the way it was designed to be used. You can't expect to treat it like it's dating but then you want it to be, you want the benefits of it being a marriage, but you're treating it like it's dating, but it's going to give you what you give it.
Let me ask you this. So if you think about it from the relationship perspective, how important is it to have a good identity and self-worth about who you are as an individual from a woman's perspective about a relationship when you're pursuing somebody?
I think to me that was one of the things that I really saw help our relationship, because of my self-esteem was so low, and I put so much of the weight of me feeling good about myself and me liking myself and me wanting you to tell me I'm pretty and telling me it's like when I began to really understand that my identity was in Christ. My identity was based on what I was created to do, not because I'm a wife, not because I'm a mom, not because I have a business or a house or a car. It took a lot of the weight of what I expected you to do. And I think so many times where people think, well, when I get married, I'll be happy. When I have kids, when I get a car, you have to find joy and fulfillment in just you by yourself. That's why we always say you are more than enough. That's not a cliche. That's centered in you knowing you are enough because who you are in Christ Jesus. You have enough. You don't have to have stuff. You can't buy value. And that you know when enough is enough. You know when to say, I'm not okay with that. You know, like, again, chasing a guy. You know when to say, I shouldn't have to chase you.
But one thing that you just said that was interesting enough, that actually made you more attractive to me, and that will make the other person more attractive to you when they have that self-confidence. They know their self-worth. They know the things that is the one that's like, hey.
Gil said one of the most attractive things to him is a confident woman. A woman who loves herself. Oh, I love you. I love you.
So, and that develops over time. And it took time of us feeding into each other. And that's what you should be doing in the relationship, is feeding into each other, because there were areas in my own life that my self-esteem was just as low. We don't want you to think that Renee's was so low self-esteem that I had to have her, lift her head up to even look at me and things like that she didn't know her worth. She did. It was just areas in her own life that needed more strengthening.
I think
and even in myself, it was the same.
And the thing, and I learned this from my daughter, there's a difference between self-image and body image. You may have a very good self-image. You may like the way you look, but you may not like something about your body, and that can affect your body image. So your body image and your self-image, you may like your eyes and your nose and your mouth, but you may not like your waist or your, so I think that when women, we need to understand that, and even men too, everybody has something that they don't like.
Right.
And if you're around people who pick at that and point that out, it only makes it amplified.
Yeah.
But one of the things I wrote it in my book, it's what you say about you that matters.
Absolutely.
And I had to learn to speak life into myself, and I had to begin to like myself, because if you're looking for someone else to give you value and identity and purpose, they can't do that. Someone who has a source can't be your source.
Because, and hear that again, it is very attractive to the opposite person, that to someone who has a good self-confidence about who they are. I ain't saying you got it. There's that difference. There's that fine line between arrogance and overconfidence, and because a lot of that is built out of falsehood.
It's pride.
There's a fine line. I think we did an episode on that talking about pride. It can look a lot like confident. Yeah, it can look a lot like confidence or a high self-esteem, but it's not.
But you know the difference is?
What's the difference?
High self-esteem is based on your identity being in Christ.
It should be.
My value is because of who I belong to and what He's called me to do, not because of what I have or what I've done or what I've created. And so I think that pride is you taking credit for what God created, and humility and having a good self-esteem is from you knowing I'm everything because of who Christ is in me.
And that's a good point. And one thing that actually goes further into that is you have to build the relationship from it starts at the beginning with the initial contact, when you stop chasing and this person has responded in a positive manner, like we talked about at the beginning. But then there's a time that you're going to have to build. You cannot rush it. You may want to, and you may even have it on fast forward. We're in a society now where everybody wants everything now. Nobody wants to build it to the point that, because that's where the lasting comes. That's where the real learning comes. No matter what you undertake or what you start on, there's going to be and you have to give yourself grace and time to be A student,
Yeah.
even in a student in a relationship, because if you don't, there's going to be a lot of things that you're just going to skirt over, or you're going to miss altogether, that you are going to need to learn later in the relationship. So you have to become a student of the relationship that you're in, because if not, you're going to be missing a whole lot.
I want to use an example of something. I don't know if you guys saw the video of Gil. He replaced the floor because he's worked in the office for 3 years in the room, and
Not just wore the floor out, y'all.
and the thing about it, to me, for me on the outside looking in, it reminded me of how a lot of our couples are. They feel the bump over when they're rolling over, and they feel it, and they're like, "Oh, that's okay." And then that, I'm just sweeping under the rug, and then they sweep under the rug.
I'm going to ignore it like I did with the floor. I ignored it.
And then when you finally, 2 years later, you pull it off.
I had to pull this cover that was the carpet mat that I had down that my desk chair was on. I pulled it out, and I had worn a hole.
It was a
through
huge
the tile,
hole.
and didn't even realize, and was still operating in my day-to-day and my normal life, but I was hitting this hole. And guess what I was doing as I hit this hole? I would just force my way over the lip. I would keep just ignoring it and just pushing past it and pushing past it, until I finally got to the point where it was like, hold up, let me stop. I literally stopped, took the effort, and pulled the carpet back. And when I pulled the carpet back and I seen that hole, I was like, oh my gosh. The initial shock happened, but then I said, as I got closer and I looked at, okay, now I need to repair this. So as I started looking at what work I was going to have to do to repair this floor, I had to realize that I was going to have to remove some undamaged pieces to get to the area that I needed to in order to do. So in other words, I had to remove some collateral damage, some excess, to get to the point where I can start anew and start rebuilding fresh. And unfortunately, I ended up having to take the whole floor up in the room.
And sometimes we don't realize that we think that we can just remove that one little plank.
That area.
But guess what? Very rarely, if you take something apart that's fragile, it's going to break. And so a lot of times we ignore so much and we push so much to the side that by the time it's time to come to someone like us to help you, you're like, oh no, just take out that one board. You're like, it doesn't work that way.
Unfortunately, sometimes you have to tear apart all of it and start all over again. And no, guess what? It was going to be some work. And sometimes you don't want to do that work. Do you think I wanted to move out every piece of furniture in my office? See, before I could even start working, I had to remove everything off the floor in order to start repairing the floor. There's some wisdom in that statement. Even though I'm talking about it in the natural, repairing a floor, but I had to undo some things. I had to move some things out in order to start repairing what needed to be repaired. And guess what? I knew going in, because I had did it before, I knew it was going to be some time on my knees physically, and sometimes in the spiritual sense. We're going to have to spend some time on our knees in the spiritual sense to repair some damage that has been done by our own interactions.
And if you've never done it before, you just think, because like couples come to us, we just have a communication problem. That might be the symptom, but the real issue is not just, communication. Because we actually were in Baltimore and we got to meet some of our ICS fam, and it was so great because we were talking about what we believe is, we don't believe there's any such thing as marriage problems. We believe that there are individual problems that you bring into the marriage. But what does that mean? Some of those things we bring into the marriage is low self-esteem. Some of those things we bring into is a short temper. Some of those things we bring into it is, like I've talked about, my family screamed and yelled and cussed. So you need to know what you bring that's damaged into the relationship.
Because we all have
something that is going to make it harder for us to change the whole floor. And we have to be willing to realize that you may think you can just take out that one piece, but the people who do this all the time, they know that, guess what?
It's a whole lot
you're gonna take
more
out a whole lot more. So, but if you're not willing to do the work, then the repair you think you're gonna make you're gonna be making it again, because it's really not. The Bible says we put a Band-Aid on things that require deep healing. You could have put a piece of tape over that floor, but guess what? That's not really.
Or I could have just put some spackle over it. I
Put
could
a
have
rug
covered it
over
up.
it.
I could have put a rug over it or
Yeah.
something like that. But I decided, no, I want to tear it apart. I want to start anew because guess what, y'all? My office looks great now because I have already done the work and it's a brand new floor down. So therefore, once you rebuild that damage, whether it's in a metaphorical relationship
Mhm.
and it's been repaired and restored, you're gonna have a brand new floor.
And
that's gonna
you
last.
know what else he did? He didn't install it the same way he installed it before.
Nope, change the whole game
He
plan.
totally changed the way, because initially he had to install where basically it would happen again. So we have to understand that if you find yourself in problems in your relationship and you keep trying to redo it yourself, you're going to keep having to redo it again, because sometimes you need someone on the outside that can bring you some new tools and a new perspective and a new way to do it. Because if you fix it back the way it was, it's going to do it again. And so I thought about that. That was like, I said, wow, I see that in how we
in
work with
relationships. So even thinking about that, getting new information, we applaud you. We thank you guys for coming and just hanging out with us for an hour for all those. And we know people pop in and pop out, and that's fine because this is going to be put out there and you can come back and look at it. We're talking about how you chasing people, chasing him.
Yeah.
How would you title it?
Stop chasing him.
Stop chasing him.
Instead, do this.
Instead, do this. So one of the other is one of the other things that you can do as far as stop chasing them is you have to be open. And the point that I was getting at is to be open to new information.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there are things that are going to happen that you have done in the past over and over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking you're going to get a different result. And it's not going to work because you're going to get the same result.
Right.
And if that same result didn't work the first time, it's not going to work the second or the third or the fourth. You have to get new information. So one thing that you can do when it comes to stop chasing them is once you take that step back or chasing her, you should be doing some self-worth and self-investing. We talked about your own self-worth, building on your own things and building
reading
up
the word,
building up on yourself.
Say the affirmations. One of the things that really helped me was reading the Bible every day. And Gil was really big on not just knowing the scripture, but knowing where it is. And so we had verses, that we would read. And, you have to renew your mind. You have to have a source that is endless. And the only source that we know of that's endless is Jesus Christ. And so spend time reading the Bible, do a devotional, watch things that are going to, this is why
like this.
We have 371 episodes.
I can come hang out with
today.
Yep.
You can have plenty of time to go and watch. We actually just reached our 1,800 subscriber. We're going to give a gift to that person. I'm not going to say the name. I'm put it out on social media. But we are trying to get rid of the excuses that people have that they don't have money and they don't have time. You can put us on whenever you want and carry us in your pocket. And so you have to renew. The Bible says, don't be conformed to this world, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. How are you renewing your mind?
And you do that by being open open to new things. We're in a society now, we're in the information age where information is at your fingertips, just like clicking on this and getting an hour worth of talk about relationships at a click of a snap of the finger of a click of a button. Well, the way you do that is because that communication, you're building a bigger social network. And everybody's doing it. I don't care what platform you do or don't do or all those different things. Everybody has a social influence. Everybody has a social network now. Even your friends are a part of your social infrastructure.
Right.
So you might as well use those things. So you have to be open to listen and to get new information and see things from a new perspective, because if you don't, you're going to repeat the same things over and over again. But by getting new information, you're establishing literally new neural pathways in your brain to say, oh, wow, this is something new. I've learned something new. So therefore, it's going to change your perspective. So now you're going to be able to recognize some of the older things and some of the older habits that you had to say, that's old. That didn't work the last time.
Right.
Maybe I'll try something different this time. Oh, I remember hearing something in my social circle or in my group or on this podcast or this YouTube video or whatever. I'm going to try that. The worst that can happen is it worked. And that's not a worse thing. I think that's a good thing.
And I think a part of what our whole thing is, there's lots of places you can go and learn about relationships. And it might be theory, and it might be fact, and it might be fiction, and it might be
Don't know.
a dream. But what we're sharing is from our 34 years of being married and being in a relationship, and our training and our experience, and the fact that for us, this is something that we value and prize, and we want to see people win. You know, what good is what you have if you I always say success without a successor is failure. So many times we're so afraid to share what we're doing. Helping somebody else is not taking anything away from
Right. And that's even goes back to the positives and the negatives.
you. Yeah.
You know, you can learn a lot from other people's mistakes and other people's shortcomings and take it and use it so you don't do the same thing.
Right.
So that's what we talk about. Even in this, we always want to go with and give you some actionable things that you can do and take away. So even after you spend these few minutes with us, or you sit back and listen to the whole episode that we're doing right now, this is new information. This is new things that you're establishing and building in the relationship. And we applaud you for that. But now there's still some actionable things that you're going to have to go and do after you click off of this video or you click off of this podcast and go do something different. And those are the things that we want to supply and give to you when it comes to anything that you spend time with us. The first one that you can do is you got to recognize some of the signs around you. I said it a little bit at the very beginning when it comes to the topic of stop chasing him or her, you working on yourself. But if you're in that relationship right now, recognize the signs around you and read the room, and then be honest with what you see.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think we ignore the things, just like me ignoring that hole in the floor. Sometimes we ignore the obvious signs that are around us that this person may not be as committed as you think they are, or that they want to be with you as much as they do, or not want to be with you. You have to be honest with yourself and say you owe it to yourself to say and be real with it with